Before we get your advice, what did you make this week? Amanda Spielman is the Chief Inspector of Schools and Ofsted, saying teachers should stop asking pupils if they feel OK because it might encourage anxiety. She's saying avoid the issue completely so that pupils don't realise they're being tested.
It's classic English behaviour, really, isn't it? Sweep it under the carpet and then hope it goes away. That's what my interpretation of it was as soon as I read that article yesterday morning.
There's a lot of outcry from teachers, but could she, reading between the lines of that, could she be saying the more you ask them, are you OK, are you worried about your exams, the more anxious they could become? So therefore, if you don't talk about it a lot, they might just sit these thinking it's more of a quiz than an exam. That's
a really good approach, isn't it? I was sitting in the green room just before I was waiting to come in. There's a father there that said, if I talk to my kid and I say, how are you feeling? You've got a really big test coming up tomorrow. Well, naturally, he's going to feel anxious. So if you build the pressure up, then I would.
Richard, are you for or against SATs?
Well, we talked a lot about this before and over the last couple of years. We're at risk of creating a snowflake generation. You're going to get assessed and tested at some point in your life. It's
every step of your life, every stage of your life.
Exactly right. It's a bit like riding a bike, isn't it? You get on, you fall off, you might hurt yourself. The earlier you start, the more better prepared you're going to be.
Some people are saying, is it too early? You know, they're very young, the first sets of SATs tests, aren't they? Do they need to start that young? I appreciate what you're saying, is that you're always going to be tested in life, but do they need to be tested quite so young? And is it about the pupils or is it about the teachers in the school being assessed?
I think as parents, we feel anxious. We want the best for our kids, and sometimes we overhype that. Kids at the age of 6 and 7, I don't think they feel the same anxiety that we do. For them, going in to do a test, it's just like doing another test or quiz or question, isn't it?
Yeah, challenge. What's your approach as a tutor on these things? I always liken these things, and I think these things should be likened to sport, for instance. Instead of scaring the wits out of people or wrapping them in cotton wool, surely you've got to motivate people for the challenge.
You're absolutely right. You can do a lot of preparation, can't you? If you're a professional athlete at the peak of your career, Phil Vickery is in Birmingham today. He's one of the top England rugby players we've ever seen, in the same way...
No, that was Phil Vickery, the cook.
Phil Vickery, the chef.
Oh, that's the chef. He's got nothing to do.
He's definitely not at the top.
He's not even remotely at the top of his... No.
Anyone that wants to at the top...
But anyway, the other one...
The other one, and Johnny Wilkinson as well, they use visualisation. So before a game, Johnny has this really famous stance where he'd put his hands out. He's creating a sense of visualisation. He's trying to cancel out all of the noise and everything else in the background to imagine scoring the points. You can do the same with the kids. Some of the best schools in England, they'll warm their students up before they go to sit an exam. In the same way you can do a mock paper, can't you? You can do a practice paper.
But do you tell them... See, I remember doing this with Jack, but do you say to them, this is a practice exam, or you just say, oh, you know, we've got this quiz for you today and I'm going to time you to see how well, you know, how quickly you can do it? How do you stop putting this kind of anxiety and stress on them, knowing, though, that they do have to do a bit of revision?
I think you need some anxiety. You need to create a little bit. It's whether you have too much. Girls will tend to be more anxious than boys, and some boys will just tend to be so relaxed that actually they need a little bit of anxiety putting into their revision. I think you need to recreate the same feeling that you get from when you do a test. So you do need to tell the students that you're about to sit a mock, and it needs to be under the same conditions. It needs to be timed and in the same room, and with a moderator walking up and down in creaky shoes as well.
There's so many families and parents we know, and at the moment they're going, oh, it's awful in my house. One's doing GCSEs, one's doing SATs, you know, one's doing A-levels. How do you help them manage their revision, their stress? Do you get involved? Do you leave them to it? Do you check that they're revising?
I think that's the best way, isn't it? So yesterday the speakers were on the show talking about make a list of all the things you're feeling positive about, make a list of all the things you're feeling negative about. Sometimes the tiger parents can over-egg it. So they might be the ones that are putting too much anxiety or too much pressure on their kids to revise and study. But you do need to talk about it. You can't just sweep it under the carpet. So I think setting clear targets of, I'm going to do this much work per day and this is my timetable. What I'm not saying is I don't think it's about setting a certain number of hours per day. I think it's about setting a task that you're going to do and making sure you stick to it as well.
Yeah. What about over-revising. Should parents...
Well, you were never guilty of
I
that,
was never
darling.
guilty. I wish, looking back, I'd over-revised. But should, you know, sometimes they need to take a break, so should parents be actively encouraging that? Say, look, you've done 2 hours now, I think you should come out of your room or wherever you're revising, get a bit of fresh air, have something to eat, maybe watch a bit of television and go back.
That's the risk, isn't it? So you build all this pressure up to your SATs, your GCSEs or your A-levels, and then you just work for 8 or 10 hours a day. So it's important not to forget to exercise and to eat well and to drink plenty of water when you're studying as well, and to take breaks after. It's different for everybody, but I always suggest 45 minutes to an hour, take a 5-minute break, get out of the house, go for a walk around the park and just get some fresh air.
Audrey says, and I wonder what your opinion is on this, Richard. I don't believe in exams. I think marks should be based on coursework throughout the year. It's just fairer that way. Fairer or easier?
We're all different, aren't we? So some of us I don't think many of us enjoy doing exams. I think we'd all prefer to
I'd always prefer exams over coursework, which goes on for blooming ever.
I'd have preferred coursework because I think it would have made me work harder, where I left everything to the last minute and then didn't revise enough. So I think if each piece of work of mine I knew was going towards an exam, I might have tried a bit harder.
I think some schools focus too much on exams and not enough on apprenticeships. The government's been focusing much more on that. We're not all suited to going to university, and apprenticeships are a really good another route that you can take that suit different people.
What about revision? There'll be students that possibly are watching this, maybe on their break from revising. Yeah. You know, they've got exams soon, last-minute tips. Obviously, they should have done most of it by now.
Yeah.
So what should they be doing right now, today?
So if you've got your GCSEs or your A-levels coming up and you're still making notes, then stop that. You should really be doing practice exam questions. Okay. If you're revising on your bed, you might think you're being active enough, but try and go and complete like a mock exam in the same room that you're going to sit your test in, rather than...
But at school?
At school. If you can sneak in there the day before your exam or a few days before, go and do that.
That might be difficult to do, but if you're at home, you're saying don't just sit on the bed with your books open, go and sit at a desk, put a timer on, do a practice paper, almost set yourself exam conditions.
That's exactly right. So go into a room you're not familiar with, and that's the whole point. Try and recreate the same environment with the timings as well. That's such an important thing. So know how long you've got to do the paper for, and then divide that by the number of marks. So you don't come out of the room and go, I didn't finish that last question.
And always turn the page over.
Yes. Or just buy the cheat notes, which is what I did most of the time. You get the cheat notes. They were called Cole's notes nowadays. You don't read as you like it. You just read the...
Well, you're supposed to have read it. They're supposed to just then help you.
I've got an A in English literature. No one knew the difference.
There's no point recreating the word, is there? So YouTube's also another good route you can use nowadays. YouTube's fantastic.
YouTube? Yeah.
YouTube it.
So with revision...
So with the content, if you're still stuck on something and you can't see your teacher, put it into YouTube and the answer will probably be there.
Well, listen, good luck to everybody out there who's taking the exams, and to you parents for guiding them through, because they're not easy, especially teenagers, are they? Thank you very much, Richard.